Now, for more analysis on the latest announcements from the ECB, I'm joined by Francesco Saraceno, senior economist at the French Economic Observatory at Sciences Po. Firstly, are the latest announcements from Mario Draghi enough?
No, they're not enough, but I do believe that there is excessive expectation on what the ECB could do. The Eurozone has been awash with liquidity for the past 3 years. The problem is that you can inject as much liquidity as you want in the system. If businesses and households don't start consuming and investing, there is very little the ECB can do. There may be some impact on expectations, but at that point, of course, the ECB has been moving too late and too little. So the problem is not with the ECB today in Europe. The problem is with governments that are completely inertial facing the crisis.
That actually comes to my second question. Now, Mario Draghi said this before, and he said it again today. Eurozone countries should push for more structural reforms. Do you really agree with that? How much more can they do?
Well, the need for structural reform, I mean, there is no question about the fact that European countries, to various degrees, all need to revamp their productive structure and their capacity to produce. The problem is when and how. This is not the moment for supply-side reforms. This is something that is being debated in my country, Italy, that is being debated in France at this very moment. This is not the right moment of structural reform. Today, the question is how do we support aggregate demand and how do we trigger again private spending, because only private spending can resume growth, and once growth resumes, structural reform will be easier.
Now, we've seen inflation rates, at record lows, and that this is worrying the European Central Bank because there are fears of deflation. Now, for a while, the ECB has been tiptoeing around the question of outright bond purchases, government bond purchases. Won't this be inevitable at some point in time? And how can the ECB and governments around Europe, especially France and Italy, who've been pushing Germany to get on board, how can they all convince Germany this is what's needed?
Well, how to convince Germany? Well, that's a $1 million question. I think the only way to convince Germany is for the crisis to unfold even more dramatically than it is today, and this is something, of course, we don't wish. The point is that even if there were these bond purchases by the ECB, I repeat, the problem of the Eurozone today is not the lack of liquidity, it's the lack for demand for credit, with some exceptions. Some countries and some sectors may actually feel a credit crunch for which the injection of liquidity may serve some purpose. But the problem is we should find a way to restart private and public spending, and the two things go together. Without a relaxing of the constraints of the Stability Pact, we will never be able to restart growth. At that point, you can inject as much liquidity as you want in the system, and you can buy government bonds if ever Angela Merkel allows you to, but that will not solve the problem. The sequence is very clear. Fiscal policy with accommodating monetary policy, and then structural reforms once growth resumes and the system is more capable of absorbing the costs of structural reforms that inevitably happen.
Okay. Francesco Saraceno, thank you very much for joining us and giving us more analysis on that.